welcome back to my channel. So I am filming today's video on my computer. I am just trying something new. I apologize if the sound is a little strange, but hopefully it comes out okay, and if not, then I will go back to using my phone or my camera, which is actually poorer quality than my computer, but just depends on how this sounds. Anyways, so we are ready for episode 8 in our Legally Fit series. I hope you've been enjoying it so far. Today's episode is going to be all about licensing and why I think you should license your intellectual property and how it can be very beneficial to help build your brand. So if you haven't watched my copyright or trademark videos, I'm going to suggest that you go ahead and do that before you watch this one, because if you don't know what intellectual property is, then this isn't really going to make a ton of sense to you. So go ahead, watch those, and then come back to this one and figure out how to make some money off of the things that you've already created. So first things first, as always, this video is not intended to be legal advice. This is simply some legal knowledge that I am sharing with you. My intention is to just give you some information and then you can take it and run with it. I'm not your attorney. Although I'm an attorney in Florida, I don't know you and I don't know your situation. So I am not your representative, and everything that I'm saying here is just general legal knowledge and not actual advice. I'm going to try to keep things really simple. So as always, if you have questions, go ahead and leave a comment down below or open up the description box and you'll see my email there. And then you can also get a recap of everything that I'm going over today in the description box as well. So let's just go ahead and get started. We're going to dive right in. So what exactly is a license and what does that mean for your company or your brand? A license simply means that you are giving somebody else, either another company or an individual, permission to use your intellectual property. And your intellectual property is copyrights, trademarks, and patents. Although, as I said in the previous videos, I'm not a patent attorney for various reasons, and I'm not going to discuss patents. So this is all going to be copyright, trademark, intellectual property. Most people think that you can really only license pictures and music, but that's not the truth. Really, in all honesty, you can license any intellectual property that has a value to it. If you think about it, if you've written any kind of ebook, say you wrote an ebook on macro tracking, you can license that entire ebook out to some kind of educational resource. Maybe there's a gym that puts on monthly seminars for the community to teach them about nutrition and fitness and things of that nature. And this month they want to use your ebook. License it out to them and let them use it. Don't let them use it for free. Clearly you can charge for that. Maybe they want to use it on a regular basis. If it's something that they want to use continually, then you're going to want to go ahead and get a licensing agreement with that company so that they can use it all the time. So just get it out of your head that this is only applicable to photographers or musicians. It's really applicable to anybody who has any kind of content, who creates content regularly and has any kind of intellectual property. As the owner of that IP, you have the ability to sell that to others for them to use for a price that you decide. Once you've found somebody that's interested in using your intellectual property, you're going to put together what we call a licensing agreement. And that's what I'm going to go over now. In this agreement, you are going to want to be very clear on exactly what that other person is allowed to do with your intellectual property. I mean super clear. So we're going to go over some of the main terms that you'll see in a licensing agreement and then discuss maybe how you would use those in your situation. So there are two things to remember. A licensee is the person who is purchasing the right to use your work, and then the licensor is the person who owns the original intellectual property. So those are two terms that you're going to see pretty regularly in these types of agreements. So keep that in mind. Also, it's important to note that there are two different kinds of licensing agreements. The first is called an exclusive license, and that means that you're giving this person permission to use your intellectual property exclusively. You don't even have the right to use it anymore if you grant an exclusive license, unless in that license you include some clauses or a term reservation of rights clause. That's where you would describe exactly what you're still able to use your intellectual property for. Otherwise, if you don't have that, then they're going to be the exclusive owner of that IP and they can do whatever that it is that agreement allows them to do, and they're the only ones who can use it. The other kind of licensing agreement is called a non-exclusive agreement, and those are going to be more predominant, and that's going to be the one that I suggest you go with in the beginning when you're not very familiar with licensing your work and how this whole thing works. With the non-exclusive agreement, you're allowed to give it to multiple people, so more than one person can be using your picture or your ebook at once, and then you're also still allowed to use it however you would like to. Under the copyright law, if you give somebody an exclusive license, they get basically all the rights that you have as the copyright owner. So they can even sue somebody for infringement if they're that exclusive licensee. It's my best advice, without knowing you or your situation, to just be very, very careful when giving out an exclusive license. Really do your homework for actually doing that. There are certain times when using an exclusive license may come in handy or may be more profitable than staying with a non-exclusive license. For example, you took this really great athletic photo of Arnold doing something, and now a company wants to use that image to really do their entire marketing campaign around, and they're willing to pay big bucks for it. If that is the case, then an exclusive license may be better for you in that situation. So because an exclusive license grants so many rights to the licensee, you're generally going to want to charge a lot more for those. A non-exclusive license doesn't give the licensee as much, so you're not going to charge as much. As far as how much you want to charge for each item that you're licensing out, it's really up to you. There are only specific laws on music. There's actually laws and rules around what you can charge for your music, and that's because of all the different organizations that take money, royalties, and things like that. If you're thinking about licensing your music, you're going to want to talk to an attorney before doing so. Otherwise, it's really up to you how much you want to charge, and the way to do that is going to be value your work. How long did it take you to develop that piece of IP? You know, how many hours did you spend? How much effort did you put in? So if you can properly value your work, then you'll know exactly what to sell that license for. So some things to think about when you're drafting a licensing agreement if you're going to do it on your own and not hire an attorney. First of all, is there a geographic region that you want the licensee to be able to utilize the IP in? You can say, you know, you're only allowed to use it in the state of Texas. I just thought of that because it's written on my wall. You're only allowed to use it in North America, etc. If there's a geographic location that you want to keep them from using your IP in, put that in your agreement. You're more than welcome. It's your property. You should be thinking about these things, and you should be able to say, you know what, I'm okay with you using it here, but I'm not okay with you using it here. The next thing to think about is, especially with pictures or something that can be easily copied, if you're granting them a license to actually print and have hard copies of the IP, are they allowed to make an endless amount of copies to be distributed at, you know, an endless amount of times? Or are you going to limit that? The more rights that you're giving away, so if you're saying, fine, take this photo, print it as many times as you want, you know, you can distribute it for the next 10 years as freely and as openly as you want, the more you're giving them, the more you should charge. If you're only allowing them to use the photo once for one, you know, thing on their website, then you're not going to charge quite as much. Another thing to think about is, especially in this day and age, are you giving them permission to use the IP digitally and hard copy? You have to think about all the ways that they can potentially use that IP, and then you need to give them permission. Whether you want them to be able to use it digitally or not, it needs to be in that licensing agreement, and that's, again, something that you're allowed to negotiate on. Also, if you're allowing them to use the intellectual property in multiple mediums, do you want to charge separately for each time they use it? That's something that you can do. So the point is, there aren't really any laws governing what your licensing agreement has to say, unless you're in the music industry, and there are certain requirements there. But for everybody else, generally, you're going to be able to come up with whatever you think is going to be best for your company and your brand. Another thing to put in your agreement is, how long does the license last? Are they getting a 10-year license, a 1-year license, 6 months? What is it? Doesn't matter what it is, put it in the agreement. It's really very important, as I said a few minutes ago, to just be very, very clear on the rights that you are granting to this person, what they can do exactly with that IP. And I mean, you can be very, very detailed about this. Say you have a great logo and somebody, right now you're only printing your logo on sweatshirts, and somebody wants to do a whole campaign with coffee, and you don't have any intention of ever doing coffee for yourself, but you say, okay, I'll license out my logo to you to make your coffee. Is the product that they're coming up with in line with your brand? So you have to really think about that, and you have to be very clear in your agreement what they're using it for and how they can continue to use it. Obviously, make sure that you and the other parties sign the agreement, and then always keep a copy of it for your records, just in case something happens. Another thing that I think you should definitely add in your agreement is a remedies clause. So what are you going to do if the person misuses the IP? If they do something with the intellectual property that you didn't agree to in the licensing agreement, what are your remedies? Of course, you can take them to court for breach of contract, but is there anything else that you want to be able to do? Do you want to be able to stop them immediately from doing what they're doing? Do you want to be able to take back that IP immediately without having to go through an entire lawsuit? Those are things to think about and things to put in the agreement before signing. If you want to put in there how much you say they misuse your IP, you can put in there a penalty of they would owe you 4 to 5 times more than what you're charging them on the license if they misuse it. And of course, like I said, you can sue them for breach of contract. It's always nice to know what the penalty is going to be if they do misuse that IP. So before you work with any company on anything like this, make sure the company has a clear understanding of who you are and what your brand is. So when they go to use your intellectual property, you want to make sure that they're in line with the image that you've created for your company and that they have a true understanding of your brand. Because licensing is great and it provides you a revenue that you don't have to do any extra work for. But if they're doing things that are out of line with your brand, then they might be ruining or diluting what you've worked so hard to create. So just be sure that in the agreement, you fully spell out for them what they can and can't do, and really what you approve of and what you disapprove of. So you can include in your agreement that you want to approve the use of any of the IP before the company actually uses it, each and every time. And if that's not something that you want to do, then fine. But if it is something that you want to do, be sure to include that in your agreement. There's no reason that you can't. That's pretty much it. There really are no rules with this stuff. The whole point of a licensing agreement is to provide you a source of income through letting somebody else use your intellectual property that you've spent time and energy to create, and that has obviously a value that somebody else sees and wants to use. The only time there are rules is if it's music. If it's not music, you're really free to agree to whatever you want to do. And hopefully you've learned in the last few minutes the important things like being very clear and open with what it is you're going to allow that company to do. Really value your work and charge them what you think you are owed. If it's an exclusive license, be very careful before getting into one of those, and then also be sure that you're charging a little bit more for that. And if it's a non-exclusive license, you can contract with as many people as you want and let as many people as you want use those non-exclusive licenses. I hope that some of that made sense. I'm not really sure. I was reading through my notes, but sometimes I just get a little out, sometimes a little distracted. So hopefully when I edit this, it sounds okay and it makes perfect sense. If not, I will do my best with the editing to get it to sound fine. So if you have questions, please leave a comment down below. I'm happy to answer anything you have. And then, of course, as always, I am open to suggestions for the next video. This is the 8th one, which I think I said earlier, and I'm not running out of ideas, but I just want to know what's important to you as a small business owner, as a fitness entrepreneur. What is it that you're running into in your day-to-day that you need help with? I would love to answer some of those questions, so comment below and let me know. As always, thank you so much for watching. Give the video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. And who knows, maybe I'll be coming out with some workout videos in the next week or so and kind of break up the legal series. We'll see. I hope you guys have a great week and an even better weekend, and I will see you next week.